It's bad. Anime.
All right, my straw hat is tilted, which is I don't know.
Yo ho, live action life for me.
I was wondering where you're going with that.
I didn't know until I got there.
I could tell by the look on your face. You were holding on for dear life, and I'm like, I guess I'm joining the ride here.
I had zero planned before I got to the end of that, and I was like, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? Here it is. Good.
I mean, Pirates of the Caribbean, One Piece, basically the same thing.
Basically the same thing. And that's why today, of course, Robert,
we're recording, aren't we?
Are recording. Which means that I am John.
And I'm Rob.
And this is Bad Anime, the show where we decide, is this anime bad? But sometimes live actions.
We earlier in the year we dabbled in a bit of live action that no one asked for.
That we did. No, you did.
Yeah.
It was gross.
It was icky. It was essentially dark, well-written Kamen Rider fan fiction. It's what it was. And
It really was.
We'll talk more about that on a later date when we get to episode 100. But this is but then again, did anyone ask for this live action, or did Netflix say here and the entire world lose their fucking mind?
See, that's my big question about Netflix and these live actions, because there is somebody that is like a cockroach in the Netflix offices who has not been excommunicated yet, even though they've consistently produced bullshit bad anime stuff, like specifically bad anime live action. Like they did the Death Note thing a few years ago. Maybe 4 or 5 years ago, that was garbage. This person's still at it. They're like, no, we have to invest everything in live action anime, which, given the circumstances, given that there's no good live action anime, in my opinion, it is a lofty thing to do. And they invested a fuck ton of money in this, the thing we're talking about today, which is, of course, the One Piece Netflix live action show. I'm hearing the budgets for each episode were far beyond Game of Thrones levels per episode.
That does show on screen to some extent.
It tracks.
Yeah, it tracks. However, it's weird because Thrones definitely had a healthy bit of CGI when it comes to the dragons. This one's gonna have a bit more as the series goes on because of Luffy's powers.
Yes, Luffy's powers, and also confronting kind of sea monsters, anything that comes in their way. There will be a lot of CGI in this, as there was in the first episode. But just to make it clear what we're doing here today. So Rob and I watched the first episode of the One Piece Netflix live action show. And today, we're going to talk about it. We're going to give our thoughts. But mainly, the whole idea is that we're going to give, at the end of the episode, our first impressions of it. Was the first impression good or the first impression bad? Because we can't make a full statement about it because we haven't seen the full thing, but we're going to catch it early. We're going to catch the first hour of it, and then maybe we'll watch the rest of the series. I don't know how the rest of this conversation is going to go. I'm literally on my sea legs right now.
Well, speaking of sea legs, I don't have any going into this because aside from all the character names, because pretty much the majority of our friends growing up all were really into One Piece.
Yes.
I've stated before, I feel like I'm like many people in this camp, where it's just the sheer length of One Piece has, at some points in my life, been intimidating, daunting, or as I get older, I just say, no. So those are my opinions about One Piece. Growing up, being a young teenager, why I didn't get into it is pretty simple. If you're asking, let's see. When the hell was when the One Piece 4 kids dubbed? That'd be what, early 2000s probably?
Oh, that was a while ago, yeah. That was a good while ago.
And that was a lot of people's first introduction in the West to One Piece. That's how a lot of people got into it.
As it was mine, yes.
Yeah, exactly. So, when you're a young kid, if you see a cartoon, you think, this looks silly, or it's not to your taste, you're not going to watch it, which is probably what happened with me with One Piece. I was just probably 13, 12, 13, or younger even, and I saw fucking Monkey D. Luffy. I'm like, this looks dumb. I'm not interested. Where's my edgy nonsense? You know what I mean? So And also not being a Cartoon Network kid, as I said before, I was way more a Nickelodeon cat.
Yeah.
So that's probably how One Piece dodged my radar for some time. But it's weird because I knew every single character name that came up just because our friends kept mentioning that.
Yep.
One of our friends have a cat named Shanks. So I'm
true.
I just know all the names of One Piece. So I was laughing hysterically because of that as I was watching it, even though like I had to think about this. The only full episode of One Piece I watched was in a hotel or an Airbnb in Belgium with you and
Oh yeah, that's right.
and our friend James. We were having a raucous vacation we're not going to get into because we'll spend 45 minutes talking about that.
There's so much to that. That like 2 days in Belgium were a lot for me personally.
Yes, for you personally. I'm so glad everything turned out okay at the end.
It did relatively, yes.
Yeah, relatively. We're all still standing. That's the best thing.
We are alive, correct?
Yes, we are.
And this is what we've done with our lives.
And I couldn't be happier. But I remember one morning. I think we were in Ghent.
Yes.
And we were probably disastrously hungover, but not knowing so because I was 21. You and James were probably 20.
Yeah, I likely was at the time.
It was right before. Yeah, I think we went.
Yes, because this was May. It was in May. Yeah, it was in May exactly. So you had already become 21, and then James and I were still. Our birthdays are like 4 days apart, so we were definitely like both 20 at the time.
Yeah, so 2 months out from both your birthdays, and we were just in Belgium.
I mean, but which doesn't really matter in Europe. I mean, they'll let you drink if you're like 4.
Exactly.
So it's
Exactly.
not a big deal.
Exactly. So it was a blessing and a curse. But yeah, one morning we were probably disastrously hungover. We were flipping through channels, and like an episode of One Piece was on, and we just said, "Oh, this is bright and colorful. Just leave it on." That's the only experience I have watching a full episode of One Piece. I later asked our good friend Sean about it, who was very knowledgeable on the topic, and he after hearing the plot synopsis, he goes, "Oh, it must have been a filler episode." I'm like, "Okay, cool. I'm glad to know the episode didn't matter."
Well, that's the thing. Like a lot of them don't, which is.
I mean, again, we talked about this before. The shonen formula, where it's just so much fluff and filler, but it's like understood and expected when you're adapting the manga as it's still going.
Yep.
And that's the thing now. One Piece is long since caught up to the manga. So from what I understand, new episodes of One Piece of the anime have like 6 minutes of new footage every week, just because
about.
they fill it up the rest with like flashbacks.
Exactly.
Shonen flashback syndrome, which we even fucking had in My Hero Academia. I'm like, you don't get to do this. One Piece can do it because they're hanging on for dear life.
The ship has already sailed on this one. All right, guys.
Great pun there. But,
pun intended.
But yeah, and so that's an interesting trend that One Piece probably started.
Yeah, which is honestly interesting because I think just to go my background real quick on One Piece. I'm sure we've talked about this in a bonus episode, but just to give it to you real quick.
One we may not have published though.
We may not have actually. Yeah, you're right. I started watching One Piece the same time it was introduced to you, probably as like it's like on it's like the 4Kids dub in America. Started watching it, had a remedial interest in it at first.
Okay.
Wasn't exactly my favorite thing on, but I didn't exactly dislike it either. I was like, this is fine. Let's see where it goes. I didn't exactly have much else to do at age 12, so I was watching it. I got up to a good point, and I believe, like to our listeners who are knowledgeable about One Piece, I got to the Skypiea arc where they go up to like an island in the sky using a boat that goes up. So that was the point where I kind of So that was the point where I kind of fell off because the episodes just became just monotonous and terrible. I just stopped. I remember very, very much remembered the exact time that I fell off, the exact episode.
Okay.
Luffy was fighting this guy whose big power was balls. So he would just make balls.
Sounds like a good friend.
And hit you with balls. And the episode was called The Trial of Balls. And I was watching it, and
And you dropped off there?
Yeah, surprisingly, yes. Because it was
all those balls?
I know. I'm usually big on balls. I'm a big ball guy.
Balls Mahoney.
Poor guy.
Yeah. Rough life he had.
Rough life. But yes, I was in the middle. They were extending this for like 3 episodes. This goes off the filler thing you were talking about. Just too much filler, too much shit. And I was like, this is boring as fuck. I'm out. So I left. And then now with this live action, the good news about this live action from Netflix is that each episode is an hour, but they have so much material to draw from. Like,
well, that's the thing.
I was very interested at starting this, what the pacing was going to be like, because believe it or not, although I'm less familiar with later iterations of the show, I am very familiar with like the first arc, because you know why?
Okay.
I've tried to do it again multiple times. So I've restarted One
so
Piece.
this is back in your wheelhouse.
Oh yeah, I've restarted One Piece at least 4 times, whether it being anime through the manga. Because I always am like, maybe I could start from Skypiea, and I'm like, nah, I should start from the beginning and just give it a shot again. And then I always fall off within like 4 episodes. So
Jesus.
This first episode, exactly in my wheelhouse in terms of things I know, characters, kind of relationship to the manga. That is fine, actually. So weirdly enough, I'm kind of the expert of us today.
Perfect.
Surprisingly.
I mean, we know this has happened before.
It's happened before, but surprise to me that it's about One Piece, and like I could also throughout this episode get some things wrong, so I'm not perfect here, but I do know the first 3 episodes, I do know the flow of things, and I do know what liberties they took in this show comparatively to the manga.
Yeah, this is
which apparently aren't many.
That's what I've heard is faithfulness, and honestly, I feel like out of all the Netflix adaptations they did, this one to me by far makes the most sense. But when it comes to Death Note and Cowboy Bebop, I'm like, why did they do these? Because the series were only, what, like 37 and 26 episodes long, if I'm not mistaken. You could just go watch the original, no problem. You know what I mean?
Right.
It didn't service itself to a live-action adaptation. When the show was like 900 episodes, you can truncate the story, especially when there is a lot of filler, like we mentioned.
Yes.
So, and, I feel like, for people like me who have virtually no knowledge of the franchise, it is a good gateway drug to be like, hey. No,
I think so too.
So this was a very smart live action for them to do.
Yes.
I want to shit on the idea of live action more just because it's fun to do in an anime context, but I'm just like, no, you guys, this is a good choice.
No, it was probably the best choice they could have made. My whole issue is like, can you make any live action work? Because we've seen it done and failed so many times before.
Right.
And I guess the question is today, did they do it right? And kind of so far, is it bad? Now, I don't exactly know how to start, but what are your first impressions of it? What did you think, like, watching it? How did you feel about it?
You were laughing through your teeth right now. I was like, well, I don't know where to go with this.
I don't know what to do with it. I think, like, I have complaints, but I have also a lot of surprisingly good things to say about it, too.
Well, so let's just go with, like, the general pacing of the first episode, because that's where a lot of my questions lie. In comparison to the source material, anime or manga, how was it pacing wise? Did they squeeze a lot of stuff in there? Did they pull a lot from? I'm gonna say that they, at least within the first hour, within the first episode, at least as far as the anime is concerned, I think they put in it like about 7 to 8 episodes. I'm guessing. Oh, good.
From 5 to 8, anywhere in that range. So they did push in a lot of things, but
good shit.
I think it went over well. I thought the pacing was actually really nice, and it didn't feel rushed, even though they did pack in a lot of material. And that's the thing I really appreciated, how it didn't feel rushed at all. The story had plenty of time to breathe. It did, which was nice. Yeah, and I'm trying to think. When it comes to like narrative-wise, was One Piece also this linear, or was it more? Because I remember like I'm trying to think. I think I remember the first chapter of One Piece. And because I think I read the first chapter of the manga, and all I remembered was Luffy coming out of a barrel. So I'm like, yes. Okay. Yeah, so they did that, yes. So that is true. A lot of it actually traces back to the manga. A lot of it is very similar to the first chapter of the manga, yes. Like the scenes with like young Luffy and like old Shanks, like very much back to the manga on that one. Very, very similar to that. Cool. The scenes with... so the only part that I maybe didn't catch necessarily in the manga, or maybe it was a thing, but I don't remember it being a thing, was the part about Zoro and this weird organization that wants to recruit him very early on. Maybe it was like a very quick thing in the manga, but I didn't really notice. The guy that with the hair that looks like a chicken that he kills.
Yeah, I just thought that was an excuse to have a cool fight scene with Zoro. So
I thought so too. So good. Okay, good. I'm glad we're on the same page.
I'll just come around and say it. The star of the show for me was Zoro. I was
really
enthralled. I was enthralled by this guy. He was definitely the character I gravitated towards the most. Again, seeing a human being do all this cool shit with swords.
Yeah,
it's cool. It's fun. It's cool.
And the guy himself, like the stunts were actually very good. The swords play was really cool.
Oh yeah.
Fight scenes were really good. Action was great. I will say, now that we're on the cast kind of component of this, I did like the cast a lot, actually. Yeah. I'm surprised. At first, the guy that plays Luffy, at first, I was kind of meh on it, to be honest. I really warmed up to him throughout once I kind of got it. Once I kind of got his take on the character, which is a little like... Because Luffy is such like a weird character to play because he's so like doe-eyed and like he's just kind of fucking stupid, but like somehow strong and smart as well. So I think this guy did a great job kind of capturing that like doe-eyedness, but also kind of backing it up with being funny, but like not necessarily trying to be funny. So I thought he did a good job there.
Well, I think he did amazing in the role because let's face it. I mean, Luffy is like the prototypical happy-go-lucky anime idiot.
Yes,
that's just who he is.
He is.
You can make several arguments that he one of the guys who really popularized the ideation of that character, popularized the whole anime idiot thing. I thought I didn't really read all the actors' name here because I'm trying just to go more raw and emotional and intellectual on this one. But I thought he did a really good job of capturing the fact that Luffy is a fucking idiot.
Yeah, and I've heard.
All I've heard from you guys growing up, more so what the other friends and you in particular, but still, it's like, yeah, Luffy's kind of a dope, and I'm like, yeah, I think that sounds like the point.
Yeah,
he's an idiot.
Yeah, like an oblivious anime protagonist, strong, kind of dumb. Yeah.
Yeah, but like clearly with a good heart, so that's the characteristic they're trying to really emphasize. Like he's a good person. Sure, like he's basically Gumby, but he's a good dude.
He is Gumby. No, I thought he did really well, and kind of off of that, the humor in the show, I quite liked because I feel like every time they take something and make it like a big time cinematic production, they have to now inject it with only like Hollywood-esque kind of Avengers style humor, which this had a little bit of, but it wasn't exactly so over the top, which I appreciated. But it was kind of very nicely accessible humor that I feel like anybody could really find funny, but also like not too much, Yeah,
it definitely carried over the tone from everything else I've seen. Like in every slight iteration of One Piece that I've had mild exposure to, like I feel like the humor was very appropriate. Also, it felt very definitely subdued anime humor. I definitely got that feeling. That's the problem with the Avengers movies now because it's a bunch of sarcastic assholes making quips at each other, why I find the entire MCU unwatchable. Because
I agree.
every fight scene is just people like pooping on themselves, like pooping on like the
you can't take like nothing you can ever take seriously, and like I definitely don't want this to be that because like this is an action series at the end of the day. Like there can be humor, but like obviously you should understand the stakes of the scenes when they get into the scenes.
Yeah. And, speaking of action, I like how there was very little blood in this because I felt like but the amount of blood they did have gave it weight. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There was a good amount, a solid amount. They weren't like going too flashy with it, going too gory with it. Like, oh, this is like a mature show now or anything.
Well, that's the thing. I was really afraid they're going to do that, really try to go hyper mature with it. Because then you get like that one fucking Power Rangers fan film everyone lost their minds over at one point when it was like super dark and people loved it. I'm like, this is awful. Why would you make it? Why try to make a 10-minute gritty Power Rangers war drama? Like that doesn't make sense.
Exactly. Why change it tonally when you could change it bonally?
So you're saying the characters are hotter in this or less hot? I'm trying to understand.
I don't know what I'm saying. I just wanted to say bonally.
I could tell because you had a blank expression on your face after you threw out that line. I'm like, go on.
I had nothing else to give. Just a bad joke.
I wouldn't be surprised if you just walked out of the room after that one and left me to do this by myself. Like, okay, looks like Bouncy's done for the day.
Well, here we go.
But also, so I want to production-wise, one thing I was really interested in. the choices of when it comes to color in this, in terms of color palette and everything they did, because One Piece is so bright and, for lack of a better word, cartoony in its depiction of things.
Yeah, it's supposed to be that way too. Yeah,
exactly. So I was very curious about how they're going to do that. They went in a very interesting route where there was a lot of bright colors. Sometimes they weren't particularly well saturated colors. It was by design, which I kind of liked for the Marines and stuff like that.
Yes.
So the color didn't hit you on the face. People are going to find this weird, but the production style in terms of the color and how they were shown, and especially when they got to the Devil Fruit, it reminded me a lot of Tim Burton's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory in terms of how the color would.
I kind of understand what you're saying there, actually.
Yeah, just the whole color palette. How it was a great mix of seriousness, but also you want to capture all the bright colors of your source material.
Right.
So I thought visually it was a good way to do that, because if the colors were too bright, given the source material in a live action setting, it'd be fucking redonkulous. You know what I mean?
Right.
But
it'd be crazy.
They grounded it enough.
Yes.
To the point where everything still was faithful to the source material from what I've seen, visually speaking, but it didn't beat you over the head with the bright colors. So which is nice. Which is a nice middle ground, because it's like kind of what the show, tonally wise, seems to be going for. Sort of like, as grounded as One Piece can possibly be. It's trying to be. So, which is cool, and it's going to build from there, I imagine, where we can get even more wacky and stuff as stuff goes on.
Yeah, I found it interesting with the color scheme as well, but I think the main thing that I had here that was kind of, I guess, my one issue with it, which wasn't exactly an issue with the material itself.
Okay.
Maybe it's just a larger issue with live action anime, I think, is that it's so hard. It is so hard. So hard to make everybody not look like they're cosplaying at a con. It's so difficult. It's just so annoyingly hard, because you have these characters with their exact outfits, with their exact look. You have everything, like the green hair for Zoro, the fucking orange hair for Nami, which is more natural, the red hair for Shanks, which just looks kind of, it just always just looks like it's somebody cosplaying, which I hate, which I can't get out of my head. This is probably the best I've seen it done, though. The best I've seen it, the most integrated that I've seen it, because as you mentioned, they kind of have a little less saturation on some of those colors. Like Zoro's hair isn't exactly like bright green. It's like green.
It looks like a dye job. Yeah,
frosty tips a little bit. Yeah,
it looks like him and Shanks went to their local CVS, picked up a box of Manic Panic hair dye, and did a half-assed job. Which I enjoyed, because you saw some of the roots in there.
Yes.
Especially with Shanks. Shanks was just a mess on purpose. And also these guys are pirates, so it makes sense that their hair isn't perfectly coiffed.
Exactly. That it's like a little messy and stuff. And I totally get that. I just don't know. As a director, the director, I just don't know what I would have done, though. Like, I'm not envious of that position to try to make anime costumes seem realistic, like real people. Luffy was probably the best case, because, it's just a guy in a red tank top and a straw hat. No problem there. But everybody else with different color hair and all that stuff, it's very, very difficult to make that kind of translate to a live action sphere. I think they did the best that anybody has done it, but I am saying still that it is just really, really hard to make them not look like they're cosplaying.
Also, I remember, because we've talked about this before, when it comes to live action stuff in general, your suspension of disbelief is way less than it is in an animated setting. Once you're out of visually of a live action thing, you kind of just you're like, nope.
Yeah, it's very easy to check me out of live action stuff, because
and I'm the opposite, where I'm just
unapplicable. I feel like the situation or the outfits are to what this is, I guess. But
I know what you mean.
As you were saying,
I have the opposite thing where I'm just like, okay, this is your visual style, cool. I'm in.
Yeah.
For me, always seeing natural human expression. Always, maybe it's the empath in me kicking in. Once I can see the human, it helps a lot with my immersion. Hence why with a lot of anime we've seen, I've always really talked about the voice acting a lot and how much the voices can pull me in. Mm-hmm. How even a show like fucking X-Arm, I remember, because there was a few really well-acted scenes from a vocal perspective.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So I definitely, I completely understand what you're saying, and I'm sure many people many people have that same opinion as you, where it's it looks like people cosplaying. But for me personally, I wasn't perturbed. I was like, okay,
That's good.
Yeah, wasn't perturbed. I was honestly shocked about how little negative I have to say. If honestly, from the first episode, anything. Music, you know, I don't remember much of the music in the show. I know being the musician, I always have to talk about that, but everything was so solid. I mean, it was especially with some scenes, you're directing us like an old school swashbuckler. You know what I mean? When the pirate ships.
Yeah.
I love it how they didn't go Pirates of the Caribbean with it now, because it feels like every pirate thing is trying to be scored like Pirates of the Caribbean. It's like, no, you guys don't have to do that. Just
you can do whatever you want.
Make a fun adventure to like like a soundtrack and have fun with it. Luffy again. I was never a huge fan of the hyper anime idiot. But since they immediately put him in a package surrounded by other characters that balance him out, it's way more palatable.
Yes.
With Nami being our, kind of a pragmatist and our thief here, being like the very one ground in the middle, and you have Zoro, who is trying to be like kind of a stoic badass, but then he has a sword in his mouth. So it's like, oh, okay, this is going to be silly.
Yes. And I do think, to your point, that even like the way the actor plays Luffy is a lot better, at least in my perspective, to translate it to live action than in the anime. It's not so over the top. It's like he has moments of going like woohoo and stuff like that, but there's no real like he's fucking annoying. You know, he's not annoying. He's like very good at it, and it just works. It just
and
works.
I really
well.
because like from what I've seen, the original Luffy I found annoying. So
me too.
This guy,
like exponentially.
So like this actor here could have easily went full on Bugs Bunny with it.
Yes.
And
and
went full on cartoon, but he didn't. He took, again, as subdued as One Piece can be.
Yes.
Yes. But it's funny because back to the point when it comes to visual aesthetics and things taking you out of the experience. I knew the show was kind of grabbing me when Zoro put the sword in his mouth, and I wasn't laughing hysterically. I had a chuckle. I'm like, okay, this is kind of silly. But it did add to the fight scene because I incorporated it very quickly with him like holding the blade up to the Captain Morgan's mouth.
No, I did like that because they also prefaced it with like Luffy being like, so what's that third sword for? And then he put it in his mouth and Luffy was like, oh.
Yes. Oh, neat. See,
so it kind of recognized how silly it was, which is good.
But here's the thing, right? They did it without all the irony, which I love. That's what was so refreshing because if it was an Avengers film, for example, it would have been a bunch of quips and sarcastic eye rolls. I'm like, can I enjoy fucking something? Can any of us enjoy anything anymore?
Can anybody? I am picking up the remnants of the fourth wall every movie. Like,
I don't want to have to carry the fourth wall home.
Keep it in the movie, please. Make it a movie. Make it a movie, not a commentary. I just
exactly. I do love though because I was really confused in the first scene. I'm like, uh-oh. When I saw Luffy talking directly to what it looked like was the camera, but it was just a bird on his boat.
Yes, I was afraid of that too. That. I had the same point where I was like, no, they're not going to do it like a fucking Little Romeo here where they're going to pause and he's going to talk to the camera.
You could have went with Ferris Bueller's Day Off would have been the much more famous example.
Oh, that's right. That would have been better.
You went with Little Romeo.
Go with what you know.
Yeah, sure. One of the oh my god, one of the more talked about films of that entire decade of the 1980s in so many regards. But you went with Little Romeo.
One of the most talked about shows of the early 2000s, Nickelodeon prime time, in my brain.
I talked about it to myself in the bathtub while spanking it.
Yeah. How do you know my Wednesday nights?
And Tuesday.
And Tuesday.
And sometimes Friday.
Sometimes.
Yeah, it's like why being a vowel. Sometimes. All depends on context.
Oh boy. But yeah, I mean, there's not really. I echo kind of your sentiment with the amount of surprisingly not negative I have about this at all. I mean, I think everything worked. It was cinematic. It felt like a movie, but it also felt fun and exciting.
The plot here was very clear and concise. Luffy wants to be a pirate. He doesn't see pirates as bad because the entire time with him they had this guy Kobe, who is basically Luffy's foil.
Yes.
So it was kind of cool because we learned it was very organic for Kobe to ask Luffy questions, so we learned quickly about his character without feeling like we're getting dumped on. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, but it very quickly established that Luffy wants to be a pirate. He wants a map to the Grand Line because in the first scene they show Gold Rogers, like the pirate, getting executed.
Yes.
And he's like, "Yeah, my treasure's out there. Go find it." The hunt's on.
Yep.
You know, so, Nami also was looking for the map. Zoro is just kind of escaping prison, and they all just kind of wind up together. They're like, "Oh," the first episode ends with them being like, "Okay, we're in this now." You know what I mean?
Yep.
It was very quick. They established Captain Morgan as a decent threat. They have his little a prissy son who we see his butt at one point.
Yeah, it was really funny.
And I'm okay. My honest to God thought when that scene when like you have Captain Morgan's son flailing the sword around naked, and you see full on butt. And I'm like, okay, how was this scene just put in for the bored girlfriends who have been forced to watch this with their significant other? I can see so many girlfriends who don't know a thing about One Piece, but like they're being there for their boyfriend in that case, or whoever their partner is, just like, oh, hello.
You know, I also had a thought during that scene.
Yeah.
When Zoro broke in and he was naked and he turned around and Zoro and the guy was like, "Don't kill me," and Zoro was like, "I'm gonna do much worse." And then it cut, and I seriously thought to myself, "Huh? Did he cut off his dick in the manga? Did they do that?"
I thought the same thing. I'm like, I thought like, oh no, he's gonna cut off the wee wee.
I was like, we already have Theon Greyjoy in the first episode of this show. But no, I legitimately thought back to the manga. I was like, did Zoro cut anybody's dick off in like the first few chapters? Am I forgetting about that? Was that a big deal? And no, of course, he just cut off his hair, which is fine.
Yeah, which is, much more in line tone with the show. They could have...
Yes.
I don't know. It could have cut off his dick and tried to make it funny. But, it would have been definitely very distracting. So I'm glad that they didn't do that. Oh, I'm glad that Oda did write that originally.
And Zoro just goes over to everybody like, "So what'd you do to him, Zoro?" "I cut off his pecker. Here you go."
Oh, my God. I mean, plot-wise, it was, like I said, super concise and easy to understand, As, they pulled me in as someone who was noticing nothing, and I left knowing something.
Yeah, and I think the obviously, right, I think that the target for why they're releasing this is to get all of those people who watch One Piece to watch this and bring in all of that revenue, because One Piece is like the most consumed anime on Earth at this point. I think that was probably the goal, but also I think some other markets that they're kind of picking up are people that are into anime but not necessarily into One Piece. The market that I think that they maybe... I'm curious to see how many people watch this having never really stepped foot in a One Piece episode or like stepped foot in like much anime at all.
Right.
I'm interested to see who would press play, if anybody, on this who isn't already familiar with anything about the franchise or anime in general.
Well, see, that's the biggest thing I'm curious about, how many complete non-anime fans are going to pull in. Or how many people just on Netflix should be like, what the fuck, and just click it, you know what I mean?
Because you got to think the grand majority of people are just watching this as like, oh, okay, I'm a One Piece fan. Let me see if they did a good job translating it to live action. You got to think that like that's most people, which is kind of like what happened with Cowboy Bebop. That like a lot of people who were just like, oh, I love Cowboy Bebop. Let's see what they did with it. Watched an episode or two, checked out on it, and then that was it. So I guess... maybe are there going to be a lot of watches? There might have been a ton of streams on episode 1. Are there going to be a lot of streams on episode 8? And that's kind of going to determine whether we see more of this or not.
That's the cool thing I realized when there's only 8 episodes. I'm like, okay, short series.
It's nice. It's good.
Well, if every episode ranges at around an hour, you got a solid 8 hours of content, which is a lot. That's a 26 episode anime series. When in terms of like in terms of watch time, it's comparable. So you have a decent show here. The question is, do either of us care? What was our first impressions? Are we going to keep going with this? What do you think? What are you feeling? As someone who is familiar with the franchise, gave it so many shots, do you think that this one's going to break the curse? Are you finally going to say, like, I'm going to try this one for real?
I think maybe trepidatiously, I will continue trying it. I think it's... I kind of wanted to earlier this year start reading One Piece instead of watching it because it just
remember you mentioning that casually.
It goes through everything more rapidly than watching it because it's just things happen fast, and like you can get through 10 chapters in like, I don't know, like half an hour to an hour. So it really just accelerates everything. So I kind of did for a little while, gave up on it, but now I think that this series coming out, it's more of like a digestible, like here's 8 episodes, just watch them. And if there's going to be a season 2, 3 continued, like that would be really nice, because if there's that, then I would honestly prefer consuming the One Piece narrative through this medium much more than I would prefer reading the manga or watching the anime. Definitely over watching the anime, but I'm not sure how long this is going to go, or like if it's going to get to that point, but if it can, that would be interesting, and I think I would be along for the ride. So I'm going to keep it going with it. I'm going to keep going with it, see how I feel about it. Could potentially happen like it always happens, and I drop off maybe like halfway through. Could be. But I don't know. Maybe it could actually resonate me with that, and I could continue with it. But what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts? First impressions.
I'm not even trepidatious. I'm just going to press episode 2.
Okay.
I enjoyed this. I mean, I just straight up as a live action property, I had fun. You know,
good.
Like I said, like things that I thought I was going to dislike, I didn't yet. You know, of course, the show looks visually insane, but that's One Piece.
Yes.
But the characters all complement each other really well. I like the interplay. You know, I'm curious to see the relationship between Nami, Zoro, and Luffy, and see how it goes. I know there's a bunch of other characters that get introduced.
Of course, yeah.
So we'll see I'm going to see how this goes. And again, maybe this is also part of my excitement because I know nothing. So I get to go in completely blind.
Yeah. I think
and the biggest thing.
I think that there's kind of a like something here maybe I want to hit on, and I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer for this, but like, did you think that it was generally just good, or did you just think it was a good live action? You know what I mean? Like they did the live action well.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess you're asking me like adaptation versus an actual just like a property, just like, you know,
right? Like
take all the
as a standalone thing, like is it really really good, or is it? I guess maybe I'm gonna figure that out through like what the audience thinks, but like. Or going through, like, that's always a question in my mind here is like, is this actually good, or is everybody just like, oh yeah, they did a good job with that live action, you know?
Well, you know, remember from my perspective, I don't have that perspective in terms of this, because I'm just like, oh, I don't know the original, so I can only base it on the live action property I'm seeing in front of me. As a first episode of a show, I thought it was good. It was definitely good enough where I want to press episode 2.
Good.
You know. Did I absolutely adore it as a first episode? No. But, I mean, that's so rare to do on the first episode of anything now. I can literally only think of 2 or 3 times in my life where I saw the first episode of something and went, that first episode was amazing.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Too.
But as a first episode, I thought it was damn solid, a lot of fun, and I'm excited to press episode 2.
Yeah.
Do I have any? It's funny because I've interest in watching this. I don't really have any interest in exploring the other mediums in which the story's been told. So that can get me hung in certain anime circles, but you know, that's fine.
That's fine. Whatever. You know, if you enjoy it, do it, brother.
The way you said brother there was the tone was so weird there. We're like, brother, I'm done with this.
If you want to do cocaine and jack off in the park, do it, brother. Whatever you want.
I'm gonna say no to that for a few different reasons.
All right, brother. All right, brother. That's all right.
What are you doing? You're just throwing bits left and right, hoping some of them land. This is incredible.
Oh God. Well, I mean, I guess that's our thoughts on it, and I'm excited to hear that you're going to continue it. I'm going to continue it as well, and I don't know. We'll see where we get with it. You know, maybe if you and I finish it at different times. Yeah. We can come back and talk about the first season. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if we want to talk about it or not. You know, we'll see how far we get. You know, we'll probably touch on it in future episodes. Be like, hey, just keep watching that or no? So did you do that? Yeah. Did you do the thing? Did you? I'm sure for episode 100 that comes around. Oh no, episode 150. Now we're pacing towards. Oopsie. Well, no, 100. Oh, we are pacing towards 100. Time is crazy. You know what's funny? I'm the one who woke up like
less than an hour, like less than 2 hours ago, and it really doesn't seem that way.
I just tested negative for COVID for the first time today, which is so I'm recently off COVID, so maybe a lot of my brain cells are dead. Who knows?
I had 2 beers last night before bed. Maybe some of my brain cells aren't working either. Who knows?
I mean, beer before bed activates your brain cells. Let's be honest here.
Yeah, depending on my mood. Yeah.
Well, anyways, thanks for listening, everybody. That was our take on the first episode of the One Piece live action, and we'll see you next week for something fucking stupid. I'm really excited.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be fun. Talk to you later, everybody.
Bye-bye.
It's bad.
That's right, everybody. The fun is over today. Thanks so much for clicking on the episode, but the fun does not have to stop here. You can hit us up anywhere that you can find us on Instagram or TikTok at badanimepod, or you can even email us to get in touch with us directly at badanimepod@gmail.com if you got any opinions or just want to send some hate mail or love mail. We'll take both. We don't care. Thanks so much for listening, everybody, and have a great day.
Simple Equations Podcast Network.